Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Jim Geraghty.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a little Hans Gruber to get things started. Welcome to the James L. Buckley Dinner and Discussion. I am Jim Geraghty, and I am the senior political correspondent of National Review, because that's what you call a political correspondent who gets old. I am also a fellow at the National Review Institute, or as I like to call it, the deliberate nonprofit of National Review. I have a late announcement for the programming. The McNeese State University Cowboys have beaten Clemson, so your NCAA bracket tournament is already ruined. Tonight, we are blessed with a special guest, the two-term governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. That's right. Knock over those glasses. It is absolutely a mazel tov. The governor is known for a stalwart and principled conservative approach to governing, his brave and vindicated decisions to reopen his state during the COVID pandemic, and I think most importantly of all that, he ensured that Stacey Abrams is only considered an elected official when she makes a guest appearance on Star Trek as the president of United Earth. And no, I did not make that up. Just a few moments ago, we were wondering if we're going to be ready on time, and it's like, oh, don't worry, Governor Kemp is running. I heard John Ossoff scream from here. So at this time, please join me in welcoming Georgia's 83rd governor, Brian Kemp.
Thank you.
All right. Before we dive into all that stuff, Governor, a question I like to ask every conservative: how did you get this way? And when I do that, it sounds like I'm asking what's wrong with you. But I think it's safe to say, and probably everyone in this room has had some experience that indicates, conservatism is not always the easy choice. Conservatism is not always the popular choice. So how did you get this way?
I think I just kind of evolved into this. First of all, just want to thank National Review, Rich, and the whole team. Honored to be here at the Buckley Dinner tonight. And, for those of you that don't know, I'm from Athens, Georgia. Clark County, it's the smallest county in the state, 159 counties. It's the only county that voted for Michael Dukakis for president.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the place I grew up in. So how I developed into what I am now, it's kind of a long developing story, but my parents are just really on both sides. My mom and my dad's side of the family were just small business people in real estate, insurance, just hardworking people. And then, I went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, even though we got our, beat today. But, I remember when I was in school really following Ronald Reagan and Bush 41 and that kind of whole cast of characters. And we hardly ever had a Republican on the ballot in Clark County. But we had a lot of conservative Democrats that ran. But we had a lot of really very liberal, just even worse than that were running our local governments. And so, I was a small business there for 10 years before I ever got into politics. And, I ran as a Republican for the state Senate back in 2002. And people said, you really can't do that. You're not going to be able to win as a Republican. And I said, look, I just cannot run as a Democrat. Like, if I'm going to run, I got to do this. And thankfully I didn't know what I know today, because I never would have run. But ended up winning. And one of the things is, I was frustrated with the government, small business person, and just kind of watching the whole, Reagan era, Bush 41 era, running a small business that I literally started with a pickup truck and a shovel. I just kind of evolved into being a more conservative. I mean, I was always, conservative, I think, but I'm more involved into being a conservative Republican. And the rest is history. The thing is, when you're frustrated with the government and you run and you actually win and you get to govern, you even get more frustrated because it is worse than you ever thought it would be. And so that's what really has driven my political careers. The more I knew, the more frustrated I got and the more I wanted to do, and that's why I ended up where I am.
All right. I just want to go back. What business were you in with a truck and a shovel? Grave
This will
digging,
surprise you, construction.
Oh, okay.
So I started a small, I was putting up acoustical ceilings when I was in school at the University of Georgia. Went to work for another contractor my last couple of years at Georgia, and then went to work for them when I got out. And I was just building, developing, project management, kind of learned the business, everything from high-end custom homes, which weren't that high-end in our part of the state, but it was still, nice product. And then also all the way down to starter home development, multifamily. Then I started my own company in '93, and I didn't run for the state senate until, 2001, 2002.
Okay. I want to flash forward a bit to the year 2020, very decisive year.
I remember that year.
I was going to say, I think everybody does. You made the decision to largely reopen the state in April of 2020. The world kind of shut down on March 12th, 2020. At least that was when it was my wife's birthday, and everything shut down. It was kind of depressing. And you received massive blowback. I particularly remember an article in The Atlantic entitled, "Georgia's Experiment in Human Sacrifice." Like by allowing people to get haircuts, you were building an Aztec temple or something like that. But you persevered and you reopened in a safe and responsible way. Can you walk us through your decision-making, what you were hearing from different people at that time, how you reached the decision, and how you stuck with it from what I imagine was a lot of intense criticism?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a longer story, but it's really kind of interesting. And, when we didn't close most businesses in our state to start with. The executive order that we wrote, if people would actually take the time to read through it, it was very well done by our attorneys. It said, we have all these stipulations, but if you feel like your business is essential, you can stay open. You just have to do this, this, and this. But then we did make the decision to close a few areas of business, like barbershops, hair salons, tattoo parlors, bowling alleys, anywhere there was close contact with people. And so most of the states stayed open. We, in fact, had people calling us going, we need to open up. We have a big box furniture store. We only have 10 employees. We can socially distance. And said, well, you should just read our order. You can stay open now. So most of the state was open anyway. But we were one of the last states to make that decision to limit the business environment for some people. And then we were the first to make the announcement to come out of it. And everybody in the Southeast was fixing to do that. And we had a lot of pressure on us because I had restaurant people and all these small businesses, hair salons, barbershops, calling me going, look, we're about to lose everything we got. And so I was feeling that pressure. And I've been in that situation before as a small business owner multiple times where, barely paid the people working for us, couldn't pay all our suppliers. When you think back to the Great Recession during the Obama years, when I first started in business, I had 3 spec houses I couldn't sell. I mean, I've been where I was about to go broke several times. And so I know how that feels. I know how it feels where you're not sure you're going to make it to the next week and be able to make payroll the next Friday. And you really have 2 choices on Saturday morning. You can get up and give up, or you can get up and go back to work and just hope your luck changes and hope you sell something. And so that's the mentality I had. I had been able to fight through that. My worst day in politics, I always think back to my worst day when I was a small business owner. Nothing in politics has been as bad as when you're thinking about you're going to lose your house, you're not going to be able to keep your kids in school, you can't pay your bills, and you can't pay the people that are depending on you to pay their bills and keep their kids, keep groceries in their pantries. And so that's why I made the decision when I did. And then, when I got attacked from that, literally from people on both sides, national media, local media, really rough time. I'm glad, my wife, my kids, and my dogs stuck with me back then. But it was really brutal. And when the president came after me on national news, I was really a little bit shocked because we had told him what we were going to do. And I talked to them and I said, they're like, Barbershops are not essential. Tattoo parlors are not essential. Bowling alleys are not essential. And I basically said, look, these are our people. These are the people that got us elected. They are about to lose everything they got. They're like me. They are not going to sit in their basement and lose everything they got because of some damn government mandate. And, you know, they had so much political pressure on them and media, you know, it really didn't matter to them. And so the next day we were trying to just put the fire out and keep things going because we had announced on Monday all this was going to start on Friday. So we had a few days to go before everybody opened back up. Well, then I got attacked the next day before we could even try to come up with a remedy to calm things down. And then the third day, when it happened again, we're like, you know, we got a choice. We can back down, give in, and really lose all our political power. Or we can say, you know what, we're doing the right thing here. We're going to stick it out. And that's what we decided to do. And Friday morning, I had a buddy of mine at a barbershop that called me, and he said, he's just down the road from the governor's mansion in Atlanta, and it's like 7:30 a.m. CNN is, streaming live from the parking lot, making sure everybody's 6 feet apart before they walk in the barbershop. And the guy called me and goes, man, this is great. The lines around the block. We ran off the CNN people, and we're talking to the local news about how great this is. I mean, we literally, at that day, we had people blocking West Paces Ferry, that's a road between Atlanta, because they were protesting the mansion because we were opening up because of all these headlines. And I had a buddy of mine that was working just right down the road. He called me and goes, I'm cussing those people out, telling them I got to go to work. They need to get out of the middle of the road. But he said, I got back to work. He works at he cuts hair at this high-end hair salon, which is really kind of interesting. This guy's a big bow hunter like me. But anyway.
The bow hunting hairdresser.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
But he told me that day, he said, I've never been busier. The smallest tip I got was $100, and one person gave me $1,000 because they were so happy to be back at work. And then my mom called me late in the day, and she goes, I'm just going to tell you, all the old ladies in Athens have gone and gotten their nails done today, and they think you're the greatest. And so that's when I knew we were on the right track. And so, we had restaurants open the following Monday, and then the rest was really history. And it was, week, almost 10 days later when you started seeing other governors start moving and opening back up.
I just realized you probably had more hair cut that day in your state than any other day in history. So
it was. I mean, the stories y'all are incredible. Like, I have run into some people, and this friend of mine told me a story that he went and got his hair cut, and his barber told him, I was literally at my barbershop on the Sunday before the Monday announcement that we were going to open back up. And he said I was in tears because I was about to make the decision to shut my shop down because I couldn't keep doing it. He said, I couldn't pay the rent. I couldn't make any money. I was fixing to close it up. And that Monday morning you made that announcement. And this guy told me, this guy's crying, telling me this story, saying, please tell the governor. And so it really, it's pretty neat to hear people say that. And they give me a lot of credit for saving their business. And I said, look, I didn't save your business. I just gave you the opportunity to do it for yourself. We just gave you the opportunity to live to fight another day.
Well, while we're on the topic of vindication, I think Major League Baseball owes you an all-star game. Now, not only was it not Jim Crow or Jim Eagle or whoever.
Jim Crow and Jim Eagle.
After the election, they did a survey, and if I'm remembering this correctly, they asked people, were you satisfied with your voting experience, and were you unsatisfied? And I believe the number for people who said they were unsatisfied came in at precisely 0. I can't think of a poll the last time I saw everybody was perfectly satisfied with something. Not even Chick-fil-A has people that level of satisfaction. So do you want to take a victory lap around the stage on that one? Or you just want to talk about that fight and be, on the topic of being unfairly attacked by a president? You're 2 for 2
Well,
so far.
I will say this. One thing I've learned in politics, you got to really learn when you need to pick your battles. And, we went through some really tough times. I was going into the re-elect, and I had a lot of my friends going like, man, you need to start pushing back against, the White House and the president, and you need to stand up and defend yourself. And I was like, well, we will. We're just waiting on the right time. Because I knew I had a good conservative record to run on, so I wasn't worried about that part of it. But after the voting bill, we did the right thing on the voting bill. Regardless of what you think happened in 2020, in Georgia, there were mechanical issues with the election because the COVID rules that were put in place, not by me, not by the legislature, but by the state election board and other government leaders because of emergency powers that they had or rules or regulations the election board did. And there was just problems. There was problems with the drop boxes, and they were procedural type things that needed to be fixed. When I was Secretary of State, we had 5% of the people that voted by mail. We had a triple signature check on absentee ballots that helped us keep, the ballots secure and make sure, there weren't fraudulent ballots. But when you have 30% or 35% people vote absentee, it overwhelms the locals. They can't do the check as well, and it creates a lot of problems, erodes confidence. And so there was a lot of really good ideas in that legislative session to fix that, and there was a lot of really bad ideas that went too far. But at the end of the day, the Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, and I got in a room, and we put a bill together that didn't suppress anything, but dealt with the issues of the day that would bring confidence and make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And so I knew that. Well, when that bill passed, I signed it like an hour later because I knew what Stacey Abrams and the left were going to do. They were going to say it's suppressive, it's Jim Crow, that we're racist, all this stuff that they've always said about me and about Republicans, not only in Georgia, but all over the country. They overplayed their hand. The dumb CEOs that weighed in on that issue didn't understand what was in the bill. They didn't listen to their government affairs people. They listened, to other corporate CEOs around the country that were pressing them saying, you got to come out against this. And so we had just a real firestorm on our hands. And so we pushed back really hard because I was just like, we were on the right side of this issue. They were overplaying their hand. And so we were doing pretty good on that. And I even reached out to Major League Baseball because we had done the All-Star announcement and offered to go through every page of the bill. I talked to the commissioner. He's like, no, we're good. It's fine. And I said, well, look, we're good and glad to go through. The other side's overplaying their hand. This is going to all play out. And he said, no, I'll let you know if I need anything. The next day he called me and said, I'm moving All-Star game. And so, I was livid, but it didn't matter. But, the way that they did that, I went after him with a vengeance, and rightly so. And a lot of other people did too. And that was the fight that we needed to pick that really kind of helped create my political comeback, if you will, because a lot of people thought at the time I was a dead man walking. But that was a fight worth fighting, because we had done the right thing. They had overreached and overreacted, and Stacey Abrams had overplayed her hand. And it was an opportunity for us to just slam her on that issue. And then we end up having the largest African-American turnout in the country in the next election. Then we won the lawsuit by a federal judge on every single count that President Obama appointed. And so it ended up being really beneficial for our state to be able to do that, but also be able to push back against them politically, and it helped us a lot in the re-election campaign.
I also
and then they came back, and I don't know if I've ever told this story, but they came back and said, hey, never really apologized. We're just saying, hey, we want to discuss having the All-Star game. And I said, look, we don't want the damn All-Star game. Like most people are still really mad at you, and this is a good political issue for me, so I'm going to use it to help get reelected. And then we can talk about having an all-star game.
All right.
And so we got the all-star game coming this year.
All right, good to know. A happy ending. I would notice also, after calling your state so terrible and Jim Crow and all that stuff, I did see Georgia Democrats trying to get the last Democratic convention in Atlanta. And I figure if you're the worst state ever, you probably shouldn't be doing that. So it just seemed like a rather quick retreat there.
Yeah, we had some fun with that, too.
Deservedly so. So I go to Savannah about once a year. My parents live across the border in South Carolina. I think a lot of people don't realize that Savannah is the second largest port on the East Coast of the United States. A huge center for international trade. How about them tariffs? Complicating your life? Too early to tell? How you feeling?
You know, I think probably a little too early to tell. I haven't heard a whole lot from like people back in Georgia. Like nobody's blowing me up. I mean, everybody's concerned, obviously, but I think they're also kind of waiting to see how all this plays out. I mean, I think if you look at the whole picture of the state of Georgia, I mean, if the tariffs hold, there's gonna be some companies in Georgia that benefit greatly. I mean, we're seeing activity now from people that want to onshore existing business we have that wants to grow in Georgia so it can be a U.S.-made product. So I think there are benefits from that perspective. But it'll definitely hurt us on some of our exports, and other businesses will be hurt. So, you know, I think people are just kind of waiting to see how it plays out. I mean, I do understand where the president's coming from in a fairness in trade and making sure that it's equitable for both sides. But like, I also understand the concern that's out there, and it's just going to be interesting to see where it goes. The one thing that I have been telling people that worries me the most is what this does to cost. Because I think that's the one place where, you know, outside of the border, where Republicans, not just Donald Trump, but myself and my reelection, you know, the legislators that were running this year, when we had a really good election in Georgia and won the state, obviously, for the president. I mean, we were hammering the Democrats on 40-year high inflation, high cost, out of touch with the reality. And we've done a lot of things in our General Assembly to help people fight through that. We've done tax rebates, tax cuts. We've put cash into one-time projects to make sure people are working in all parts of our state, because we're putting, you know, $2 billion over 2 years additional money into transportation projects that allows people at the county and local level to build bridges and pave roads and just keep people working. And it's good for our logistics, and it's good for long-term growth in the state. But that's the one thing that I think could submarine Republicans in the midterms if the economy's tanking and if we have high costs. And look, I think Secretary Bassett has owned that saying, and I agree with this too. We cannot continue to run our economy off of government money and government jobs. And if you look at what happened during the Biden administration, the amount of federal money that was spent that was propping up the economy, the number of people that they hired, the number of programs that they're started. I mean, the states are all having to deal with this now because they're pulling back all this COVID funding on all these, you know, non-NGO groups that got money, and they're now coming to the states going, the feds are cutting our money off. We need to, you know, because everybody hired more people, even though this was short-term COVID money. And so it is going to take some tough love. And I do think they're right to own that and explain that to people. And I think if they do that, you know, people will hang with them a little while the ship gets righted. And we'll see where that goes. But I also think you're going to see people coming to the table, and Trump will cut deals. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that for the most part will be good for America.
Yeah. You alluded to having some past disagreements with the guy who's across the river over there. You also discussed getting a raw deal from the Biden administration. What's it like working with these presidents? Smooth sailing so far, or, you know, rattles in the end?
Yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, Trump was just mad at me. I wasn't necessarily mad at him. You know, President Biden was a different story. I mean, look, I appreciate his long service to the country, but I mean, I just don't feel like he really had a clue about what was going on. Their policies were so bad. I think just, you know, a border's a good example. I'm chairing the Republican Governors Association this year. We have been to the border I don't know, 4 or 5 times. We've done 2 or 3 press conferences down there, really pleading with the Biden administration to change direction on the border, because all the states we're a border state now. We're dealing with all these people, fentanyl, human trafficking, just all these, pressure on housing and everything else that's going on. And they just were like deaf ear. And, just never would do anything. And if you remember, the Democrats had complete control from 2020 to 2022, and they just ignored that problem. And so I think they were just tone deaf on that. If you look back when Donald Trump was president in his first term, every COVID dollar they did was per capita. So every state was treated the same. In the Biden administration, if you had opened up like we did and had a low unemployment rate, you got penalized on COVID money, because they would give California, New York, New Jersey, whoever else more money because they didn't open up and their unemployment rate was higher. So they got more money per capita. And so we were getting penalized for being open. And then, Biden's dumping all this money out there on infrastructure, IRA, and then at the same time, they are doing a federal enhanced unemployment match on top of what's required in law by the states. So they're paying people more money to stay home and not go to work while they're pumping all this money in the system for infrastructure projects. So that is just counterintuitive to what you should be doing. And we were clamoring for them, if you're going to spend that federal money, pay people to go back to work. And that's what created, in my mind, a lot of the 40-year high inflation. Is you had all this money out there. You didn't have enough people out there working to meet the demand on the supply side, and it was a dang mess, and it was the government that created that. And then the IRA picked winners and losers because they were helping the big 3 automakers because they're union backed, and it screwed people like Kia, who was already in the state of Georgia. I drove the first electric vehicle off the line in West Point, Georgia at the Kia plant, made in America. The company's been there for 15 years. Didn't qualify for the tax credit. And so, they picked winners and losers, and you're seeing all the stories now about all this money that was doled out. And that's just what created a lot of the mess. So it wasn't that, anytime I ever talked to President Biden, on storm damage and stuff like that, very receptive, I appreciate that, but their policies were just horrible. But right now, the Trump administration has been great. We have a great relationship with them. I've talked to the president quite a few times. His cabinet secretaries are great. I know several of them well and have gotten to know already, even in this short term, a lot of the other ones, and they're very receptive. And we're working together to cut out government bureaucracy. When you think about things like energy, what he did today on education, we're one of the first states, maybe the only state in the country, to have health care waivers that we got in the end of the first Trump administration, that have a true work requirement in there, and really conservative health care policy. And so we're working with them on things like that. And, that's going to be good for the country.
Last month, I understand you traveled to Europe for the Munich Security Conference. And as I understand it, this one featured a lot more crying than usual. I thought it was like baseball. There was no crying in it. But a lot of topics about Ukraine, a lot of talks about tariffs and such. What were your takeaways from it?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing, and I really met with an interesting cast of characters over there, and I learned a lot. I'm really glad I got to go to Munich, and I'm not even sure why I got the invite to that, but it was very interesting. I ended up being on a couple of panels, but I got to hear the vice president's remarks, and I met with the foreign minister from Canada. I met with the Deputy Secretary of Defense from Argentina, and then met with the Minister President of Bavaria, which is right there in Munich, and they're very conservative. And, the Canadians obviously were upset about the tariffs. The Europeans were upset a little bit about the tariffs, but mostly about the tone of the Vice President's speech. But they even acknowledged that, we need to be talked to. They would tell you, we need to do more on defense. And we have hundreds of German companies that are doing business in Georgia. We had several of them we visited that are doing expansions right now. And I've been going to Germany since I first got elected in 2019. And when I went over there then, the first meeting I had, we were out in the country with this little small auto parts supplier. You know, they started out as farmers. During the winter, they didn't have anything to do, so they built a shop. They started making precision parts, and that's how they developed their business. And they were out there talking about, you know, we got to be, you know, carbon-free energy by 2030 or 2050 or whatever. And I remember leaving, and I asked our economic development guy, who has worked for 3 different governors now and been over there a million times, I'm like, how in the world are they going to do that? I mean, like, I just don't, like, as a business guy, I don't understand how they're going to shut down nuclear and do this with all sustainable energy. He's like, there's no way they're going to do it. And so I think they're coming to realize now that they've just got to be realistic with what's happening in the world, and certainly can't be dependent on Russia for, you know, energy, and they need to diversify their supply chain. They need to do more on national defense. So regardless of how you think all that went, if you look at what's going on in Europe right now, I'm actually encouraged by, you know, what the soon-to-be new German chancellor is doing with the budget, what the EU is doing with the defense budget. We also visited an air base in Germany that's helping supply the effort over there. And then we visited a base where we had Georgia National Guard and other U.S.-based troops in Poland that's real close to the Ukrainian border, that at the time was shipping supplies over there, helping repair vehicles. And like to see the effort that's going on there, and to talk to the Polish people and the leaders over there. I met with the foreign minister. I mean, it makes you know, to me anyway, why we need to have a strong hand against Putin. Mm-hmm. You know, I get where, you know, we need the Europeans to do more, but we do not need to.
You can applaud. That's an applause line right there. Yeah. Okay. 2 topics I want to get to in the few minutes we have left. I kind of alluded to this in the beginning. You've heard the speculation. You've seen the polling numbers, and I looked it up. It says just, he will mop the floor with Jon Ossoff. I
haven't seen that headline.
All right. Do you want to make any news tonight?
Well,
there are reporters in the room who will freak out if you do something. So everybody, deep breath.
Well, if Reverend Ills had prayed for me to run tonight, I'd probably say I was going to. But since he didn't, I'm going to hold out for another few more weeks.
Thanks, Reverend.
No, look, we're in the last 2 weeks of our legislative session. We have a big tort reform fight that we're in the middle of. We just got a bill passed on the House floor today. We're going to be on the Senate floor for an agree tomorrow, and it is a real knife fight. Down in the state of Georgia, we need 91 votes to pass a bill in the House, and we did that today with 91 votes. So I've been engaged in the legislative process, and when you're at this part of the session, everybody's mad at each other, you're frustrated, and you're tired. It is not a good time to make future political decisions.
All right.
So I'm going to try to get done with session, I think it's the week after next. Maybe enjoy the Masters golf tournament a little bit. Right. Y'all have ever heard of that? And then do a little praying, a little thinking, and then I'll let people know what we're going to do. But listen, regardless of that, you can count on me to be engaged to beat Jon Ossoff in 2026, and to make sure that we have a Republican governor that follows me.
Okay. No pressure, but you're term limited, so. You're free, right? You know, nothing else going on. So.
I'm busy.
All right, okay.
But I will be free.
All right, so we got about a minute left, and I always like to ask governors, as I said, I go to Savannah once a year. I've been to Atlanta for conferences and stuff. But if people want to go to Georgia, where's a great place to visit that they probably haven't heard of before?
Well, you know, there's a lot of great places in Georgia that you can go. And, you know, we got destination resort places. So I would just, you know, places like Sea Island, Savannah's great. Obviously, you got Atlanta. I say if you're going into the metro area and you have a short window of time over the next, you know, 6 or 8 months, you should go to a Braves game. The ballpark that they got up there and the Battery is the area around the ballpark. It's really cool. There's corporate headquarters up there like Papa John's, TKE Elevator, Comcast. But then there's, you know, condominiums there, people living there. There's great restaurants, venues outside the ballpark. It's really a vibrant area, so it's a great place to go have dinner, go to the game, have a late dinner. You know, there's brew pubs. I mean, it's really a fun area, especially if you're just in Atlanta and you don't have time to move around the state. I think anywhere on our coast, I would think, you know, McIntosh County, which is the county towards Savannah above Glenn, which is where, you know, you got kind of Jacksonville, St. Simon, Sea Island, and then McIntosh County, and there's a little fishing village right there that's just a great little area. And there's spots like that all the way up and down the coast, so you can kind of research and go to a little coastal fishing village, great food, a lot of good music. That would be a good suggestion too if you're down that way.
Governor, I wish we could talk for the rest of the night, but apparently something else surprising is going to happen on this stage.
All right.
So ladies and gentlemen, Governor Kemp.
Thank you.
And I pass this off at some point to Rich because something else is going to happen. So, Governor, thank you.